bottle fundraiser, and we've got some extra ones in the back. You guys have really taken to this project quite well. Thank you for that. We can do even better. Take this baby bottle home, fill it up with loose change, bring it back on Father's Day, and Mrs. Gentry, this is going to support... support our work with Boone County Right to Life, and also as a little gift for you is a little precious feet pin. So this is feet of a child at about 10 weeks of age, okay? So good thing to put on your lapel, hand to people at work, the people you see at the stoplight that are in need of, money or food, give them one of these along with a bottle of water, and... That's a good evangelism thing, isn't it? Okay. All right. So baby bottle fundraiser, okay? Item number 2. You can't see it because it's kind of concealed. Our confirmation class this year has donated, drum roll please, an ice cream machine. And the people that work in the kitchen are like, oh no. So we have a brand new commercial ice cream machine. That the youth will actually we'll fire it up this Wednesday. I had promised them a pizza party if they didn't embarrass me during the public questioning, and they didn't. So we're going to have pizza, ice cream, and games for our confirmation students Wednesday night. There's instructions for it in there. If you're going to use it, just talk with somebody that knows if you're confused, okay? Let's see. Also, today after late service, we have new member luncheon. So if we have any new members that are here with us in Bible class that have joined, let's just say the last 6 to 8 months, why don't you stand up real quick so everybody can see your faces again. So we've got some kind of sporadically around, okay? All right, welcome again. Good to have you guys with us. Okay, excellent. Okay, you can sit down. Good job. All right. And let's begin with a word of prayer, and then I'm going to dive in here with our special guest that we have with us today. The Lord be with you. O God, you make the minds of your faithful to be of one will. Grant that we may love what you have commanded and desire what you promise, that among the many changes of this world our hearts may be fixed where true joys are found. Through Jesus Christ, your Son, our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. It is my privilege and pleasure this day to introduce to you our new pastor-elect, Aaron Schultz. Welcome, Pastor. And I'm going to just turn it over to you, buddy, and let you introduce yourself. Don't forget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you to all. Is that loud? Too loud? Is that the volume good? Volume's okay? We're staying with the McKays, and they've been so good to us, not just hosting us, but over these past few weeks, too. He left early this morning, so I didn't see him, but I was, kind of nosing around, and I went into his study. I was looking at his bookshelf, and I wanted to see what kind of theology he was into. But I couldn't get past all the books on Harley Davidson and Golf Digest. Well, thank you so much. I've said this a few times to a few of you already, but we have been so well received by all of you, and it's just been fantastic. As a father, as a husband, I want my family to settle in. I think I'm going to settle in fine, and I'm ready to get to work, but, sometimes I forget about the ones in my family, too. But they've been so well received. We've been so well received. You guys have been great, and I think it's going to be fantastic. So thank you to all of you for all of that. I think maybe the first thing I guess I need to introduce. So my name is Aaron. I'll get into a little bit about my background and how it, ties into education and all of that. But my wife, Katie, anything you would like to say?
We're thrilled to be here.
Very thrilled.
All my kids are going to be in school for 9 days, 9 hours a week.
So that's Katie. I can be a little bit more reserved and quiet, but Katie is definitely the charmer. So I guess the first thing in order is confessions. So here's one from me. I am a Saints fan. And back in 2010, when the Saints beat the Colts in the Super Bowl, I loved it. It was one of the greatest days of my life. So 2010, I was living in New Orleans at the time. I was a Lutheran school teacher at an inner city Lutheran school. And, once you get in that area, you just get immersed into the culture, the Saints. And, we went to football games. The day after we got engaged, we went to a football game. Their big rivals, the Falcons. We call them the Dirty Birds. So it was the Saints and the Dirty Birds. But that was 2010. The Saints beat the Colts. And, here we are just north of Indy. What is this, 12 years later, which is really cool how that... So anyways, I love the Saints, but I think there's a little bit of room for the Colts as well. I do love all the sports connections. So many people we've been talking to. The Indy 500, the Colts, the Pacers, AAA baseball. We love it all, and we're excited to get into that. So, a little bit about me. I was born and raised in California, and it wasn't the beaches of California. It was the farming parts of California. It's like a slice of the Midwest in California, and it's beautiful country. It's pastures. It's the foothills of the mountains, and my great-grandfather came to California from Minnesota at the time before, he was the third generation Schultz. But anyways, he was a farmer. He was a grain farmer. And so I come from a long line of grain farmers. And I've got a lot of family still in farming today. My dad was a farmer, but then he got involved in education, and he was a teacher for a long time. He taught middle school history. And I love history, and it's largely because of him. He later on became a principal, and he was also a coach. And that's all I ever wanted to do growing up. I wanted to do those three things. I wanted to teach, I wanted to coach, and I wanted to be a principal. And I really thought that's all I wanted to do. And I was totally satisfied with that. So I went from California, I went to school in Nebraska, the University in Lincoln. Any Husker fans here? Hey, all right. Go Big Red. Went to school in Nebraska. I got my degree in elementary education, and I was on that path to be a teacher, principal, and a coach. Ended up in New Orleans, and that was my first job. Taught at a wonderful Lutheran school, very traditional, loved it. And that's where I met Katie. We both, she was down there for a couple of years, and we met down there, we fell in love, we got married at our Lutheran church. She became Lutheran down there, so that's kind of a big deal. But spent some time there, kind of bounced around a little bit, but then I ended up in Alexandria, Virginia, at Emmanuel Lutheran School, which is where I was introduced to classical education. And immediately just fell in love with it, believed it was the right approach to education, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But 10 years in a Lutheran school, and I did a variety of things, from teaching, a little bit of being a principal, a lot of coaching, and loved every bit of it. My 10th year, I started to feel a little bit restless and in teaching. Didn't know really what was going on, but then I started having conversations with my pastor, Pastor Chris Esgett, great man, and he kind of got me on this path of going to seminary. So after 10 years in Lutheran education, headed to Fort Wayne. The plan was to go to Fort Wayne and then also visit St. Louis, but as soon as we went to Fort Wayne, we just knew that this is the place where we wanted to be. So we ended up in Fort Wayne, and now I'm coming at the end. Next week is my last week as a seminarian, and call night was, 2.5 weeks ago, and ever since then, it's like I want to get down here, I want to get to my people. It's really been cool. You pray for your church, wherever that might be, leading up to call nights, and then call night happens, you find out where you're going, and then you can start praying for your people by name. and it's just been so awesome. So I've been wanting to get down here and get to work, and it's still, I've got papers and lectures and readings to do, and it's hard to stay focused on those things all the time, and I'm so anxious to get down here. Let's see. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free. I don't know how long this is going to go. What time do you guys usually get out of here? 10:30? Okay, great. So let's see. In Fort Wayne, we sent our boys to Redeemer Lutheran, Pastor David Peterson's church, and they just started a classical school about 5-6 years ago. So when we sent our boys to that school, the school was 2-3 years old, about that. And, as soon as I got to seminary and I was out of the classroom, I started to get a little bit of an itch to get back into teaching. And so Mr. Pullman, Nathaniel Pullman, who was the headmaster of the school, he allowed me to come in and teach a little bit each week, and that was really great. I mean, I was studying to be a pastor, but I still was able to kind of fill that need to teach. And so I knew about classical education because I had spent 5 years in Alexandria, Virginia. But then, learning from Mr. Pullman, Nathaniel Pullman, who's been a mentor to me, and, seeing how he does things, and also how he's been building that school from the ground up, I think all that knowledge is just going to be very helpful. My teaching background, just a little bit. So 10 years as a Lutheran school teacher. Most of it was middle school math and science and a little bit of PE, but I've done the full gamut. I love literature, even though I never really taught it in middle school, but that's become one of my favorite things, and we'll talk more about that too. All right, well, Pastor McKay wanted me to come up here and talk a little bit about my vision for the school. Now, I've only known for the past 2.5 weeks or so that I would be coming here and serving as your pastor and headmaster, but so I haven't had a whole lot of time to think about my vision, but it is coming, and I do have some plans already. But at the same time, it's a little bit dangerous because I have a board meeting after church today, and all these ideas that I'm about to share with you, none of it's been approved. So I haven't run anything by the boards. We'll see how this goes. Just kidding, it's going to be fine. You guys have already called me, so you're stuck with me. In one of my emails, I think it was to Keith, I'm typing and I wrote our school. And as soon as I typed that out, it was awesome. It was I could have put your school or my school. I could have just used the article and said the school, but it's our school. And I really believe that. We're in this together. I've got ideas. Yes, you guys have ideas, but we are going to be building our school, Advent School. And it's really exciting. Sometimes I do need to keep this in mind. I start thinking about ideas, and we can do this, we can try this. I've got to also kind of temper my ambition, my expectations, and we're going to be in prayer about this as God guides us as we build this school. And He's going to have it grow as He will cause it to grow. But it is our school, and He's going to bless it. I mean, I'm walking into a great situation. We already have a wonderful, pre-K and kindergarten program that I've already heard so much about. So the infrastructure is already there, right? So that makes things a lot easier for me. I've heard nothing but good things about that school, and you heard from Katie. She's thrilled to kind of put this into context. So our oldest two go to the classical school in Fort Wayne, but she's been at home with the other two. And so she loves being a stay-at-home mom, but at the same time, I think she's ready to get them in school, right? Yeah, so from the infrastructure, the groundwork, a lot of that has been established already. There's a committee that's already been put into place, and you guys have been talking about and writing down your ideas for the school. The expansion team, I know there's been a capital campaign program that's been very successful. So all of these things have just really lined up, and I'm just kind of coming in and, you guys have done the hard work, and I'll come in and help you guys build the school. Let's see. So, again, I just can't say enough about how well we've been received. Mark Harris was driving us around yesterday, and we looked at plenty of houses. And, Katie and I were talking about the finances. We're trying to just, can we make this work? Can we make this work? And it's just been great. And Mark, at one point, said, we take care of our own. And I feel like, that's just been the theme for the past, for yesterday, for today. And so how does that tie into the school? Well, as far as I see it, our first priority is to the children of Advent. They are going to be my first priority, and making sure that, I think we've got some homeschool parents in here, which is great, but I will be tending to the children of Advent. They're going to be my first priority. And there's going to be room for some mission too, but the people of Advent, you guys will be priority number one. Your kids will be my main priority. And I think that's got to be in place so we take care of our own. One of the papers that I was provided, the philosophy of the school, our guiding principle, somebody wrote that every child is a child of God. And that's a starting point too. It's our children, Advent's children. Every child is a gift from God. And so with that comes responsibility, right? We've got to, teach them, prep them in the best way we can, which kind of gets me into classical education. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time with classical education today. Those times will come. I intend to, before the school year starts, sit down with any prospective parent or anyone who wants to learn about classical education. We'll sit down and we'll talk about these things. But here are a few things that I thought I'd just run these by you. Some catchwords or phrases that maybe you've heard of. The liberal arts, the 7 liberal arts, classical school, yes, there's Latin, and a lot of them, there's Greek as well. The Western heritage, virtue, all of these things, yes, define classical education, and we'll get into those. But I think my favorite description of classical ed, it's about pursuing the good, the true, and the beautiful. And it's about finding these things in every subject, the good, the true, and the beautiful. God is good, He's true, and He is beautiful. So it's about finding His fingerprints in math and the algorithms of how the celestial bodies are moving. And there is a lot of truth. There is truth in math because these algorithms, they don't bend for anybody, but they are true and they are beautiful. It's about finding beauty in poetry and the great works of our Western heritage. So it's finding beauty in these things, truth, and goodness. So the liberal arts, Augustine said, it's by these things, the 7 liberal arts, that we use these tools to fashion our knowledge. Let's see. Maybe this will be more helpful. So if you were to go by a 4th grade classroom at a classical school, you walk in and you're going to hear a lot of reciting and recitation, memorizing, and you'll hear students say, amo, amas, amat, amamus, amatis, amant, just over and over and over again. And why do we do this? Well, it's about cultivating the mind. It's about strengthening the memory. It's about building these rhythms into a child. And so if we're going to be doing it this way, let's fill their mind with beautiful things like poetry, Shakespeare, great Lutheran hymns, the Psalms, all of these beautiful things that we're just working into the child's mind. We repeat them over and over again. Repetition is a big thing in classical education, and we're just working it into the cadence of the child until it becomes part of the child. And then that child, we can get into the trivium. So the grammar stage is very much about working these things into the child. And then you get into the next stage where the child is then, once these things have been instilled into him, he's able to then kind of think about them and, speak about them well and, think about what they mean. Here's an example of so imagine an 8-year-old boy, right? An 8-year-old boy who can recite the Gettysburg Address, who knows plenty of Psalms, plenty of poems, Shakespeare. He can recite, or he knows the themes of Aesop's fables, 8 years old. This is what we're going for. And it's totally doable. Right approach, right teaching methods, we can get to this point. And this is an 8-year-old boy. Think about when he gets, we're going to build a K-8 school, and maybe we'll just keep on going and build a high school too. But think about this 8-year-old child when he's 13, and he's gone through 8th grade, and then even into high school. We continue on that trajectory. It's amazing what this is going to be, a well-rounded young man, young lady, and it's just going to be, it's beautiful. It's not just about knowledge, right? We're working these things into the child, but then think about that child's, not just the knowledge, but the intuition and the imagination of this child once he has these beautiful things instilled into him. All right. Do I have a marker board up here? Is it? Uh-oh. So the biggest question, or one of the biggest questions about classical ed is, why in the world Latin? What's the point of that? It's a dead language. Nobody speaks it anymore. Why use Latin? And again, we will get into all this stuff later, but thank you. I thought I'd give you a little something really quick. Let's see. Timorous, Tom. Mm-hmm. So Latin, the English language is about 70% founded on the Latin vocab. So if you think about a child, a person who knows Latin, how much more he's going to know his own language, English. And it's an inflected language, which we won't get into too much right now, but English is not inflected. So an inflected language, like Latin, like Greek, there's just a lot more relationship between the words, and you really have to know grammar. So understanding Latin is going to help that person understand English. So I support timorous Tom. This is one of the sentences that I used for, they do forms and review. I guess like 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds. So a 7-year-old would look at this sentence in English and think, okay, support, I kind of know what that means. Timorous, what the heck does that mean? Support, so port, I know, comes from the Latin porto. So this 7-year-old student is thinking, okay, porto, I know that means I carry. Sub. So the Latin student is thinking, I carry from underneath. And I just think that's a beautiful way to look at this word support. That's, we use it all the time, but I carry from underneath. I support Tom. Now this word timorous, the Latin student was like, I don't know what that means. I've never seen that word before. But then they're thinking back in their Latin vocabulary and thinking, that comes from timeo, which means I fear, right? So this doesn't mean I fear Tom, but Tom is fearful. He's frightened. So I'm carrying from underneath this Tom who is timid, who is frightened. So that's one way to kind of break it down. And then you get into timeo. You have all heard the line, I fear the Greeks even when they bring gifts. Well, that word is this one right here. So you can draw that connection to great literature by Virgil, the Aeneid, right? So you have the grammar connection, you've got the historical connection, great literature. It all kind of goes together. And that's another aspect of classical education is you integrate all these subjects. It's really easy to kind of fall into math, history, and so on, but the more you can weave these things together, the more it's going to have an impact on the students. Let's see. Like I said, I'm really into good literature. In fact, do you guys know CCLE? It's the Consortium of Classical Lutheran Education. It's the big, Lutheran education, or classical Lutheran education. CCLE is the big governing body, if you will. They're having a conference up in Fort Wayne this summer, and I'm going to pitch it to my board today, but I need to be at this conference. Not only do I think it's good that we have a presence in the CCLE, but I'm also presenting a paper at the CCLE, so I've got to be there. But the paper that I'm presenting is Finding Lutheran Theology in the Good Books. And I get a look from my wife because she knows that this is she is so tired of hearing this from me. So I won't get into that, but good literature. Somebody once said that good literature, the good books, like the Aeneid, like Homer's Iliad, like the Jungle Book, Aesop's Fables, all these great books, they reorient and they re-enchant the soul. Isn't that beautiful? They reorient and re-enchant the soul. And even though these books, Virgil was no Christian, a lot of these authors are not Christians, but there is a lot of truth in these books. There are a lot of, principles that's from the beginning of time. They are just true. And let's see, where was I going with that? Oh, yeah. So these great books, we find ourselves, in the presence of these great minds thinking about great things. So you think about an 8-year-old child who, what's something that we would read? The Jungle Book is something I read with them, and Kipling is just a genius in his writing. So it's beautiful writing, it's great intellect. You get these beautiful truths, and then these children are just interacting with this beautiful genius, and it's just a good thing. So it's good for the soul, and again, we're working it into the child. Sometimes people, they worry about, and I think this is fair, the intellectual side of things. Well, what about the spiritual side or the physical side? Classical education is very much about a holistic approach, and all three are important. Of course, I love the good books, I love Virgil, but we are a Lutheran school. And I would love to do daily matins, Monday through Friday, every morning, and just think about, 25 minutes every morning. The students are reciting the creed, they're hearing the Psalms, we're doing the Kyrie, we're doing these beautiful things, and again, they're just getting worked into the child. And then they soon realize that the liturgy is very practical. Now when that 13-year-old is having a hard time in whatever it might be, he remembers the Kyrie and Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy. So all these things are just become a part of the person, and they just become a part of the person. But Aristotle said, to kind of get back to the physical side, I love sports, and I think the physical aspect is important. But Aristotle once said that a boy with an undisciplined body would find it very hard to be brave. And so we will discipline the body as well as the soul and the intellect as well. Just a few more things. This first year at Advent is going to be, I think it's probably the most critical year of the future of the school. It's going to be about laying the groundwork. It's going to be about setting these rhythms, these cadences, these routines, the procedures, things like pickup procedure for the kids, newsletters, and also going to like the curriculum and whatnot. So we've got to establish those things, and we've got to establish them well. So this is a very important year, the first year of the school. And then, you guys know this, but the plan is to start first and second grade this fall, and then each year we'll tack on another grade, third grade, fourth grade, and so on, through eighth grade, and maybe through high school. This upcoming year, I'm really going to be focusing on those cadences and developing those rhythms. As far as a marketing plan, that's going to come just not so much this year. My whole focus is going to be the school, getting things in place, and then we can start thinking about, opening up the school, to other people and doing a marketing plan, visiting with parents who are thinking about the school, all that stuff. All right, I'll stop there unless, go ahead.
No, so any questions? I got the mic here and I can walk it around, so raise your hand.
So I realize you were just using this as an example, but Shakespeare's plays do typically contain a lot of violence, murder, suicide, sex. Are you sure that's appropriate for most 8-year-olds to be reading?
That's a great question. Thank you. Now, one thing about good literature is it doesn't just point out the beauty of man, but of course also the bad things too. Here's an example. I was teaching at Redeemer 2 years ago, and I have this 7-year-old girl. We're reading King Arthur and Guinevere and Lancelot. And Guinevere is not the model of a modest woman. She has some affairs. And, I preview everything that I do in the classroom, and I came across this part, and I really had a hard time with it. 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, are they ready to hear this? And it doesn't go into great detail, at least the version that we were reading, but it is very clear that she commits adultery. And I wrestled with it. I talked to Mr. Pullman, the headmaster, and he said, yes, do it. They need to hear it, and we need to point it out, and you can kind of distinguish the good versus the bad. And as soon as I got to that part, this 7-year-old student, her name is Esther, she throws her head down and she just can't believe it, right? And I thought, how perfect. She knows, because, these things have been worked into her. She knows, once she heard that is wrong, that is a sin. And, yeah, to answer your question, it's within reason. We're not going to, there's some books that, we're just not going to read. But, kids do need to hear about some of these things. Shakespeare, yes, there are a lot of bad things in Shakespeare. There's a lot of good in there, too. There's a lot of truth. One of my favorite moments was Henry V, Band of Brothers, his speech on St. Crispin's Day. So I read that, and I have mostly boys in my class, but the boys are just getting pumped up. They're just getting so excited about this. And this is, his big speech right before the big battle. And so I read this part with the boys, or with the entire class, but the boys especially, and the girls just don't understand. They're like, what are these, what's his deal? But at recess, right after reading that part with the boys, they're outside, and one of them is right in the center, like giving the speech. His fist is up in the air. The other boys are pumping their fists. And, good literature does promote good virtue, too. Having read that part, the boys knew what courage was, and they wanted to be brave. They wanted to be courageous. So to answer your question, it's within reason. I totally understand. Some of it we work in, absolutely, so they can see the bad and not just the good. But, yeah.
Right over here.
Yes.
So when you were talking about classical education and the liberal arts focus, it really
Right.
reminded me, I'm an IB student at my high school. And I was wondering if you've ever had experience working at a pre-IB school or see any value of making the K through 8 program pre-IB, because it does have a lot of it helps a lot with college credit And the IB program in itself is International Baccalaureate, so it's a lot of liberal arts, holistic approach to learning. So I was just wondering, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, no, I've not thought about that before, but that sounds very interesting. I'd be curious to hear more. Yeah. Sorry, that's all I got. Sounds like a great idea.
My God, you got to have more questions.
Oh, boy.
Anybody?
You mentioned disciplining the body as well. What does that look like, especially in the younger grades?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I love being in the classroom, and I love having fun with the kids. I love teaching, but, I do think there's a place for, absolutely, discipline in the classroom. Corporal punishment, I'm totally in favor of. Just kidding. Right, oh, yeah. I mean, discipline, absolutely. Just training kids to walk appropriately in line, to raise their hands before they answer a question. Just little things like this are very important. And, an obedient classroom, a classroom that's kind of knows the structure, they know how to do these things, they're going to be able to receive education, they're learning a lot better. Does that answer your question? More or less?
That's part of it, yeah. I was also thinking about the physical education aspect.
Oh, sure. Like PE. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was a PE teacher for a long time, so I do think that's certainly valuable in the school. The school, again, Redeemer in Fort Wayne, one thing that they do, they make these foam swords. And so every recess, these boys are running around with these swords and, just... There is structure to it, right. Right. Well, I was getting there, hon. But yeah, the teacher, he's really big into medieval history, and he knows how to use a sword. They're getting into archery as well. So physical education, archery, swordplay, absolutely. Those things are great. But yeah, I would love to work in how to swing a baseball bat, the proper stance when you're in the box, how to shoot a basketball, how to throw a football, how to run a curl route. I think all these things are good to know.
Golf club.
Golf? Oh, of course, yeah. You can come in that day and teach.
All right, another raised hand?
I'd like to ask a question. Most of the stuff you are talking about seems to emphasize the boys in the classroom. I would like to make sure that the girls have equal opportunity to have physical education and all these other things, and sports.
Sure.
And I also want to know, are you going to bring in any more current literature, more current art? I agree with all the beautiful things that were done during the Renaissance and all those kinds of things, but lots of other great art things have been done since that time, a lot of literature since that time. I don't want overemphasize on just classical Greek and Roman kinds of things.
Sure. Yeah, good question. I say 8-year-old boy because I'm thinking about he's 9 now, but I'm thinking about him when I'm giving these examples. Absolutely. The girls are going to have equal opportunity, and I'll teach her how to swing a baseball bat and how to, wield a sword. But I am a male, and I know how to, and I've got 4 boys, so a lot of my perspective is coming from that. And so, I understand that when it comes to, raising a girl, or, I taught girls when I was a teacher, but if you have advice, if you have opinions, I'm always welcome to hear that too. But I'm not going to have the boys in the front, the girls in the back, and at PE time, it's just not just going to be the boys and the girls over here. It will be equal opportunity. And I think there is worth in in some of the stuff that's been recently written and recently in art too. So I'm not opposed to those things.
Any last questions? Okay, as Aaron spoke to, the board will be meeting with him this afternoon for the first time. And I think Katie's going to go look at the house one last time before that offer goes in. But thanks again for your words. And Pastor McKay, any final words from you?
Before we close with prayer, just a reminder, as Pastor Schultz mentioned earlier, graduation is this next week. That's Friday, commencement exercises at 4 o'clock p.m. And he will be walking the stage, receiving diploma, as well as our deaconess-elect, Jen Sukala. Jen, are you here in the room? There she is over there. So we'll have 2 people from Advent graduating this year. And then the placement or call service for deaconesses is Thursday morning, the day before, 10 o'clock in the morning at the end of chapel up on campus. Okay? So all those will be available for you to watch online if you go to CTSFW, and we'll send that link out this next week in case you want to watch and participate. Okay? All right. Pastor Schultz, would you mind closing us with prayer, sir? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever.